Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 17th and tonight's movie is Horror in the High Desert. This is a found footage slash mockumentary slash camera point of view movie from 2021. There's this experienced outdoorsman who goes missing in the Nevada wilderness, and I guess this is trying to get to the bottom of what happened. The trailer gave me pretty much nothing else. A lot of it was just landscape or nature shots with people talking over it and voiceover. And I don't remember them showing a desert. This movie came up when I looked up recent good found footage movies. And there really isn't anything left I have to say. I'm just gonna go watch the movie. This kind of hurts, because I don't want to be so hard on what's clearly a low-budget movie, but I didn't think it was great. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. It had a good idea, and the way that it did its horror was pretty well done, but there were a lot of other problems with this movie that kind of got in the way of that. It's presented as a documentary, like a true crime documentary, sort of like Howard's Mill. And this one really did feel like something I would see on like a YouTube true crime channel, especially with its use of stock footage at points. However, they didn't have a narrator. Instead, they had just had like a few other main people that they would talk to about this. I think that the 4 main ones, besides the hiker, were his older sister, the private investigator that sister hired, a reporter lady, and his roommate. And while we don't see that many scenes of the hiker, his name was Gary, I wasn't a fan of his acting. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't know what his deal is, but the way he talks, it sounds fake. Sort of like Chills or the guy from the Action Lab. And this isn't to send hate to them. I'm just trying to draw a comparison. As for the 4 other people that were interviewed for this movie, the reporter lady was okay. The other 3, sometimes it felt kind of, I'm reading my lines. And at points that did detract from the realism that the movie is trying to create, because this is a very realistic situation. Hikers go missing all the time. I would say that the 2 biggest factors in why this movie ultimately didn't work for me are the acting, which I already talked about, and the pacing. With Howard's Mill, it started out being about this one thing, and they got through that, but then more and more things kept getting uncovered. There was always something new to look at, something new to think about. That's not really the case with this movie. There are some developments that come up in this case, but they take a while. They take their sweet time coming. Again, the basic story of this movie is good. I just wasn't a fan of the way it was executed. And I don't want to be disparaging in this video. This is clearly a movie that came from not that much, like Rorschach or Bad Ben. And when you look at it from that perspective, the movie is fine. But when you compare it to other low-budget found footage movies, like, say, Hell House LLC, Butterfly Kisses, The Lost Footage of Leah Sullivan, or even the big 2, The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, those movies had something in them to make up for their lack of budget. They had really clever scares, they had great acting, they had clever writing. This movie just ended up being kind of mid to me. And now let's talk about a few spoilers. One thing that the hiker never told anybody in his life about was the fact that he had this blog that he posted on about survivalism and wilderness type of stuff. And this blog had 50,000 followers. This is all something that the police apparently knew about, but his sister didn't find out. I don't even remember where she heard it from, but she heard about it, and then she looked on his computer, and she saw everything. The second to last video before his disappearance was him, like, sitting in his room talking about finding this weird, like, cabin-looking thing in the woods, or like a shack, and the vibe that it was putting out was so awful that he felt scared for his life. There were commenters speculating that he made it all up, you know, for like attention or something, which, I mean, I guess is a reasonable reaction, but considering the fact that these would have been his fans, it's kind of weird. And we never see this video, by the way. We only see a still from it because the sister, when she was going through it, somehow accidentally deleted it. I feel like there are multiple steps to deleting something off the internet, and apparently he also deleted it from his computer too, for some reason, even though he didn't think anyone else would ever see it. I don't know why we never got to see that video from like a movie perspective. In order to prove the commenters wrong, he decided to go back out to that shack, this time bringing a camera and a gun, and not his dog. They established that he brought his dog with him on all of the excursions, so it was really weird to his roommate that he didn't bring the dog with him on that one. And that would have been where the story ended if it weren't for I think it was a month after the disappearance and the case sort of went cold. This random couple camping out in the Nevada wilderness, they had his backpack just left at their campsite. And aside from his normal belongings, that backpack contained his severed hand, which was still holding a camcorder. Apparently, since the people from the documentary were only allowed to see things that were released to the general public, we only saw clips of it. But that still makes me question why they decided to leave in a 30-second shot of him just standing there looking at a bush. But anyway, he is using like an infrared camcorder to walk around at night without a light so he wouldn't be spotted. It was done really well. The scares were pretty well done. It did end with a jump scare that reminded me a lot of the one at the end of Lake Mungo. There were a lot of theories and conspiracies floating around the internet about what exactly he found in that cabin, ranging from witches to aliens to like a crack house or something like that. Instead, I think that the story was probably the most reasonable one. It was just a couple people living in the wilderness who did not want to be found, and when he came back, they made sure he could never come back again. I thought it was a man and a woman, but the movie only ever talks about one man, so I guess it was just this one guy, and it was hard to see in the footage because it was very grainy, but he looked like a zombie. The movie only ever talked about him having physical deformities, so maybe that's not what they were going for, I don't know. And the movie ends with saying that now there are a bunch of influencers who are trying to find this cabin again, and the fact that that is really awful and stupid. I think that Followed and Gonjiam Haunted Asylum kind of did the whole internet culture thing a little bit better than that. For a low-budget independent production, this isn't terrible, but I thought it definitely could be better overall. And that's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.